And last week the challenge was, don't rule yourself out. Count yourself in. Don't get lost in the post. Don't deliver the wrong message to people who need to hear God's message of salvation. And we might see ourselves as fragile pots. That's what we are, basically. But we carry a great treasure. That's what we're told. So God isn't looking for perfect people, thank goodness, but those who are willing to be workers in his field, with the courage to go where God sends and do what he does and say what he says. That was the challenge. How's your week been? Don't answer just yet. Jesus lived his life in the knowledge that he was sent by God and that he was sent to this world for a purpose. You know, on one occasion, right at the start of his public ministry, he was in the synagogue and he was reading out an Old Testament prophecy. And he told everyone that this was being fulfilled in him in that moment. I mean, what a moment. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me," everyone say, sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, that the blind will see, that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come. Now there's a message of hope, isn't it? There's something worth getting involved in and letting people know about. And if you remember from last week, Jesus prayed for us and he told his disciples, he said, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." So we get to proclaim this same message too. Working for the Lord, living sent, focusing on the things that Jesus prioritizes here, and being good news to those around us. It changes our mundane, everyday, routine life into something significant. And God says that wherever you're positioned in life, at school, at work, at home, wherever you might be, if you do it primarily for him, rather than for people, then it's never wasted. And this is the verse we finished on last week. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. So I hope that was encouraging last week. And to help me illustrate what it means to live sent, I've invited a different person here each week. And people I know who've been sent, I believe, for a very specific purpose. To be that message of hope and life here in our city of Gloucester. So, are you ready, Rita? Would you give Rita Rimkiene a really warm Kingfisher welcome this morning? Have a seat. Should we pull it a little closer? Let's get close to everybody. Comfortable? Very. So, some of you will know Rita. Back in 2015, we as a church, we actually, as part of our Harvest Appeal, we raised some money towards what Rita is doing at the World Cafe. So if you don't know what the World Cafe is, it's a work which is run from Brunswick Baptist Church. And it is a work amongst the refugees and asylum seekers that arrive here in our city. So before we get into that, would you just introduce yourself? Say, where are you from?
I'm Northern European. I'm from Lithuania. So I'm married to Vidas. He's Lithuanian too. I have two daughters, Rugile, she's 15, and a 4-year-old somewhere in the building.
Can you hear Rita?
Can you hear? No?
Do we need to turn her up a little bit? Yeah.
Up. Do I do again?
That's fine.
Okay.
If you can't hear, shout out, because it would be crazy if you were sat at the back and couldn't hear anything. Just put the mic a little closer to your mouth. That's it. So how did you arrive in Gloucester?
Well, actually, I should blame one of the people that come to your church.
Oh, okay.
And they know who they are.
Is that Brad and Anya by any chance?
Obviously. Well, I met them a long time ago in Austria, so it was good friendship then. And when I went back to Lithuania, so I received a package. They're saying, well, this is the school you should come. It was Redcliffe College. So through them, I came here. with my family. Then Vidas has become Christian here in this country. And then in 2010, we joined European Christian Mission, so we're missionaries in the city. And then it happened that Adele, the director of GARAS, Gloucester Action for Refugee and Asylum Seekers, she
Does
invited...
everybody know GARAS? It's
You've
the
heard of
organisation in the
GARAS.
city that works
It's on
with
Barton
asylum
Street.
seekers. Yeah.
And they work with refugees and asylum seekers. So she invited me for a chat and said, well, what do you think you could do? I said, well, there's always something to do. And the fact that we were doing hospitality in our house, and the house has become very small to have so many people in our home every week. So that was a good opportunity to say to the church we work is Brunswick Baptist Church, but we are sent by Cannon Road Baptist Church. So our sending church is here in this country. That's
So you're sent from Kendal, just down the road, to Brunswick.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah. And it's very good. I like. And then, so the church said, yeah, we could do that. Let's try how it goes. And I would not say that this is the ministry that belongs to Brunswick Baptist Church. It is a ministry for the whole churches in the city. We have about 7 churches coming to World Cafe Socials, which we held every 2 weeks. And where asylum seekers contribute a lot by cooking, by helping in many different ways. Is it okay? I'm just getting into, yeah.
Carry on.
And so the idea is very simple. And our vision is based on Matthew 25:26. I was hungry, you fed me. You remember that verse. So it's all based on that. And then we preach the good news. So when we express our love, when we show grace and forgiveness and just being compassionate towards people suffering, I hate suffering. I know nothing about suffering. Most of us know nothing about suffering, and these people will come from. So it's a great privilege to be invited to be part of their lives. And if we can contribute a little bit and show a little bit of that love, then it's a big deal for me. So, and one of the things I really love to see, I love to see people coming to Christ, and we've got a great group of Iranian men. That's Iranian time, it looks like, that they're coming to Christ really just one after another. So it's nice to see that, and we have Bible studies for them, that men look after them, and then we have Christianity Explore for women, and we go to their house. And then we have English classes and a little shop every now and then. And then we arrange volunteering places for them because we partner with the secular organizations too. So we sort of like to be part of the lives where God is, and God is everywhere. So when people say, how do you know where God is? I say, well, that's his kingdom, isn't it? So I don't need to look for him where he is. He's already here. So, and I love to see that when Christians preach the good news, and our tongue has no bone and we're very good at talking, that they practice. And this is a space created for Christians to rediscover their own passion for Christ and what they can do. It's a safe place. We're all equal. We sit together around the table.
So these are the socials. This is how it started.
Yes.
So you just started putting on some social meals for refugees, asylum seekers, anybody that wanted to come and be part of it.
Anybody.
And I've been along. Some of us have been along on it was a Wednesday night. Is it Tuesday night? It varies, isn't it?
Now it's mainly on Wednesdays.
Mainly Wednesday night.
Almost every 2 weeks.
And like Rita said, the guys themselves cook, so you're getting a flavour of
the best
international cuisine. It's great. And so what happens on those evenings? What is that about?
In the evenings, we like to say that when people come first time, if you're local, so the local, what we mean that you lived here all your life. Doesn't matter what nationality you are, but you're local. So we ask you to make one friend only. One friend, no matter who this person is, and you look after each other very, very well, as if it's your own family. Because for us as a family in our house, it's starting to become very difficult to look after everybody. Because we want to visit them in their homes, we want to support them when there are difficulties. And for one family, it was just war. So that's how it all, But now we can see that actually church is taking a family to look after. So we have, like Abbey Church is amazing. They took on 2 Syrian families to look after, and they arranged everything. It's just amazing, and all the schooling they helped, everything, whatever they needed to be supportive. And Even the kids last year, they went to Christian camps in the summer, too, so that was really nice. So very encouraging to see that. And people rediscovered Christians, they gift. So say, well, we would like to do this. What do you think? I said, oh, well, you do it. I don't. So it's nice to see that those that talk, well, I'm not sure how do I share my faith, by inviting people for coffee, by being with them, just listening. I think listening less than talking, it's always better. Sometimes because we like to talk a lot, but not to listen. And I think good talker is a good listener. So it's nice to see that Christians taking on, and we have about maybe around 7 churches that are participating. And as we know, if you studied a bit of Gloucester history, church history, we're not very good at working together. But it looks like this bit, the socials, bring churches together. It's nice. Nobody really, who are you? We're just here and we're doing together something. And then we have people coming from Cirencester, Stroud, and Churchdown. And then we get, these people are not from church. They're just locals that volunteer to bring Syrian families, or mainly Syrian families from those places. And they're English Buddhists, some of them. That's amazing, I think, So you get all the different spectrum of people, and we're all together. And trying to live life. Yeah.
So what were your sort of reservations or initial thoughts when this was just starting to get going? How were you feeling about it?
Well, so if it's going to grow, how are we going to fit in? How are we going to do? How are we going to look after the people? It's just how effective are we in our lives? Are we living the life that we can really be a testimony to people that we have Christ in us? Are we right? Is our gospel the right thing, Is our theology, our understanding of being part of people's life, are we okay? Are we allowed, because we have so many Muslims, are we allowed to be praying for them out loud in that gathering, Is it okay? Are we offending them? But actually, I'm a very blunt person, so I'll just go and say, do you mind? We're going to pray because it's church, and this is what we're going to do. And, well, if you don't like it, we'll pray anyways. And actually, they expect that.
Yeah.
So basically what for us, I think for all of our team, was to say, actually, what are we ashamed of? It's our faith. We should be celebrating, and this is their expectation. Less of the English non-church people expected. Some of them said, Rita, that was a bit too Christian. I said, I'm a Christian, and you're coming to my house. If I come to your house, I will respect your customs, but you're in my house, and you're eating with us. You should respect us. So, and it's fine. So until we're very clear and honest, it works.
How many refugees and asylum seekers do you reckon are in Gloucester right now that you're working with?
Gloucester is a city that we don't have much housing. So therefore, I would say, without the unaccompanied children, so we have about maybe 150. So they're singles together with families. Unaccompanied children, I don't know how many. Yeah. But there are more families coming gradually, so it just takes time, because if home office doesn't have house, so then they send them somewhere else. Yeah. And it's always rotating, so they never stay in one place for a long time until they get the status. Yeah.
So this is a changing, growing thing that you have.
Yeah, there is the next stage, but I can't tell you. It's a secret.
What have been some of the obstacles along the way? What are the things that get in the way of you doing what you're doing?
We had, it mainly came from Christian communities saying that we should be preaching gospel more robustly. We should just, I said, well.
We get that.
We should almost, you come, you're in my house, I bang you with the Bible over your head, and you should know it.
But it's about building relationships with people, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And in our lives, with Feeders, we learned that when you make friends, gently you can talk and you share, because we have to respect our own lives, where we come from, backgrounds, history, everything. It matters how we perceive God. Yeah. So that bit sometimes is difficult, because we still have people that come and, oh, you haven't preached gospel today. Why you didn't do it? I said, well, because it's my life. So if you become friend with that person, you will have the chance. So just relax
Yeah.
and eat together. That's it. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say?
Another thing I learned from from the Christian side here, that people ask me often, how do you know God's will? It's a big question, isn't it? We ask a lot, how do I know God's will in my life? So now I was thinking for quite a long time, because some people said, oh, it looks like you're always in some kind of ministry and you're always something pushing ahead, and as if you know always that, this is the will of God in your life. I said, well, I know because God told me so, and it's in the Bible. So if I seek God, the first thing I seek God, and then God's will is quite obvious because it's in the Bible. And when we read, feed the hungry, be with the widow, be with the orphan, these are the people named. So I talked a lot with the Christians that come to World Cafe, and we talked about that. I said, well, if you're here, don't you think that this is it? You are part of God's kingdom, and you're part of church. Doesn't matter which church, this is God's will. You're already here, so therefore just get on. Make a friend.
Get on with it. That's the message
Get
of
on with
today.
Yeah, so just don't be scared. Just eat together. Food all the way.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know it's
you.
such a short period of
That's
time
okay,
to
thank
talk
you.
about everything that you're doing,
Yeah.
but please catch up with Rita afterwards. Would you say thank you to her?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, listen, if last week was about not letting our insecurities get in the way of what God is wanting to do in our lives, this week I want to focus on what happens when you feel that God has given you a specific thing to do. And maybe it's just what Rita said. You know what you need to do. You know what God's called you to do. But things just seem to conspire against you. And opposition comes. Then what? Well, let me take you to a man called Nehemiah. We've looked at him before, but just to give you a quick backstory of Nehemiah, this is a quick history lesson. Don't go to sleep if history's not your thing. But some 1,000 years after the time of Moses, who we talked about last week, and about 400 years before Jesus came, the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, were in a desperate state. Mostly this was because of their disobedience and unfaithfulness towards God. But as a result, their nations were destroyed. The city of Jerusalem was completely conquered by the Babylonians at the time, who exiled almost everyone out of the region. And that's how it was for about 70 years. Jerusalem was like a ghost town in ruins. And then after those 70 years, the Jews were given the opportunity to go back to their homeland. But only a few of them did, and though they tried to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, they were stopped by their enemies, and no one thought that this obstacle could be overcome. And so the walls lay in ruin, the people stayed in trouble, and when we meet Nehemiah, it's about 75 years later. So a lot of time has passed, and he's working in the king's palace in Babylon when he gets a visit from his brother, who has been to visit Jerusalem, and he hears about the great trouble and disgrace, and something stirs in Nehemiah. So this is from verse 4 of Nehemiah chapter 1. And he says, "When I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned, fasted, and prayed to the God of heaven. Then I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of unfailing love with those who love him and obey his commands, listen to my prayer. Look down and see me praying night and day for your people Israel. I confess that we have sinned against you. Yes, even my own family and I have sinned. Please remember what you told your servant Moses, that if you're unfaithful to me, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands and live by them, then even if you are exiled to the ends of the earth, I will bring you back to the place I have chosen for my name to be honored. The people you rescued by your great power and strong hand are your servants. O Lord, please hear my prayer. Listen to the prayers of those of us who delight in honoring you. Please grant me success today by making the king favorable to me. Put it into his heart to be kind to me. In those days, I was the king's cupbearer. So Nehemiah was a Jew. He was born in captivity. He had risen to a prominent position and a trusted position in the king's palace. He was like a personal bodyguard. This was a man who lived about 1,000 miles away from Jerusalem. He hadn't known his homeland at all, but he was a man who was deeply devoted to God. But here, when his heart first begins to stir and he feels that maybe he's being sent to Jerusalem, all he could see really were the obstacles. For one, he had a job that was not going to be easy to get out of. He couldn't just take off. He just couldn't do that. He was fearful that if he did, or if he even asked the king, he could be killed. So it was that serious. And notice how fervently he prayed about the situation. Always the first thing to do. In fact, he prayed, if you read it, from autumn through to spring. So it's quite a pretty long period of time. He waited for God's perfect timing. And then when the king asked Nehemiah, "Why are you looking so sad? You must be deeply troubled." What happens next? Well, have you ever been waiting for something? Have you ever been rehearsing in your head what you're going to say in a particular conversation, and then the moment comes? Has anybody been in that position? How do you feel in that moment? What's interesting to me is that, despite Nehemiah's strong sense of calling, despite his prayers, despite his deep trust in God, when the moment came to act, his overriding emotion was fear. I recognize that. We read, "Then I was terrified." Every time you and I step out in faith, fear will be right there trying to trip you up. It's just the way that it is. I call it the attack of the what-ifs. I think Rita just mentioned a few of them there when in her situation. How are we going to fit everybody in? How's this ever going to work? What if? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I look stupid? That's always my one. What if I can't overcome this obstacle? What if? I felt it before I became the pastor here. I know that Jan and James and Katie and Craig have felt it every single step of the way of Treasure Seekers development. There's always been a battle with the what ifs. Don't be surprised that there is going to be opposition to going where God is sending you. And the first place you feel it is internally. That's where the opposition firstly comes. Our enemy would love to stop us right there with all the reasons why this isn't a good idea and why it's never going to work. But watch how Nehemiah responds. I mean, he could have backed down. He could have said, "Don't worry about me, king, I'm fine." He could have just swallowed those feelings and just got back to normality. But where would that have left him? Where would that have left the people that God was sending him to? But this is what happened next. He replied, "Long live the king. How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins, and the gates have been destroyed by fire." And the king asked, "Well, how can I help you?" And with a prayer to the God of heaven, I love that. Like, quick, "God help me." The prayer to the God of heaven, I replied, "If it please the king, and if you're pleased with me, your servant, send me." Everyone say, "Send me." "Send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried." Just because God is sending you somewhere, that does not mean it's going to be an easy journey. It wasn't for Nehemiah, and it's not for us. Now, we can allow the difficulties and the obstacles to put us off, or we can trust in God and go anyway and grow in our faith. He won't do it for you. I've never known him do it for me. He empowers us to do with him what he wants us to do. And what a difference it makes to those that God is sending us to In the process, let's always bear in mind the bigger picture that there is. When Nehemiah made it to Jerusalem, the effect of his faith and vision and the positive response he had had from the king had a massive impact on the Jewish people. And their hope was revived. And for the first time in 75 years, they started to believe that Jerusalem could be rebuilt. And as we read on, it says, and then they began the good work. They began it. Job sorted. We got through that one. That's great. It's all good from here. Not quite. There were still some obstacles to overcome. And this time, it was external opposition. External opposition. This is Nehemiah 4:7-8. But when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs, Ammonites and Ashdodites, they don't sound good, do they? Ashdodites heard that the work was going ahead and that the gaps in the wall of Jerusalem were being repaired. They were furious. They all made plans to come and fight against Jerusalem and throw us into confusion. That's what had happened in the past. It had worked in the past. Let's try it again. I mean, the reality is that not everybody is going to be a fan of what you are doing. No matter how much you think what you're doing is great and good, not everyone is going to understand. Some people may see what you are doing as just plain wrong or a threat. But don't let it confuse you. Don't let it derail you when you are pursuing God's plan. Nehemiah's response was not to waste his time, actually. Not to waste his energy getting into fights and arguments with his enemies. Firstly, again, he prayed. That was the first thing he did. Always the first thing for us to do. And to put in protective measures. This is what we read. But we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night to protect ourselves. And see that it was a joint effort here. The responsibility wasn't just on Nehemiah to do all the praying and the protecting. But we prayed and we guarded. You know, in our joint mission here as a church, it's so important that we take collective responsibility to pray and to guard each other that we might be protected. In the last series we did on the spiritual battle, remember this verse from Ephesians about prayer. It says that prayer is essential in this ongoing warfare. Pray hard and long. Pray for your brothers and sisters. Keep your eyes open. Keep each other's spirits up so that no one falls behind or drops out. Pray. Let's read our prayer updates that we get sent through by email every week. Let's get to Connect Group and pray for each other. We need it. Let's make every effort to get to the prayer meetings. My job as pastor is not to do it for you. I hope you realize that. I can't do it on my own. But to rally us together, I can do that. To encourage unity, to cultivate real community. You know, the enemy is intent on putting obstacles in our path at every opportunity. But as long as we are involved in praying together and working together and meeting together, then we won't have the time or the inclination to get distracted by the schemes of the devil. Have you noticed that the problems come when you start to feel isolated? That's when it gets difficult. So get plugged in. Nehemiah's enemies, they wanted him off-site, away from the work. They wanted to pull him away from the community that was building there. And they kept inviting him to come down to a place called Ono. Remember this? But his reply was, oh no, it was. He said, I'm doing a great work and I cannot come down. Why should the work stop while I leave to come down to you? Don't come down to the level of opposition. Stay where God has raised you up. So easy to be intimidated and diverted by other people's agendas. And it's tempting to engage in some creative retribution. Has anybody been there? When you're feeling hurt or upset. But that will only ever bring you down. Instead, let's keep our focus on what God has sent us to do. Let's stay true to his message that he's written on our hearts. Let's not get pushed off track. So that was the second obstacle that he had to overcome. And then there came a third for Nehemiah. And you'll recognize this one too, I am sure. He had confronted his fears. He had confronted the lies and the threats of some very real opposition. But then, within his own ranks, people started complaining. And they started getting seriously tired and started to lose hope. This is what we read. Then the people of Judah began to complain. The workers are getting tired. There's so much rubble to be moved. We'll never be able to build the wall by ourselves. They went from saying, we can't do this, when they started. And it wasn't that long, only a few weeks later, that they were saying, we will never be able to do this. What was the difference? The difference was discouragement. Discouragement and negativity. Have you ever prayed something like this? Lord, I know you've sent me here, but it's just too difficult. There is just too much to do. I can't do it. Surely this wasn't what you had in mind for me. It's beyond me. I didn't sign up for this. This is where it can get confusing, because I can believe that I'm in the right place, but negativity will tell me that I'm not. External opposition, coupled with in-house negativity, is a deadly, toxic environment which can lead to fatal discouragement. If you've ever been in that environment, no matter how much you believe this is where God sent you, the temptation can be to just give up. As Nehemiah found, sustaining a positive attitude and healthy relationships is not easy, but they are crucial if we are going to see come to pass what God has sent us to do. We need each other strong. That's why in the book of James we're told this. We're told you can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only if you do the hard work. Hard work. Don't like those two words. Hard work? Really? What hard work? The hard work of getting along with each other. Treating each other with dignity and honor. It's hard work. Being grace-filled, have you found? It's hard work. Blessing others when all you want to do is curse them. It's hard work forgiving when you've been offended. It's hard work, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it. Have you noticed that negativity just drains you of energy? And it drains you of motivation? And it drains other people around you? Has anybody ever noticed that? Nothing gets built in an atmosphere of negative. Those walls in Jerusalem got halfway built, and then the work almost stopped as the moaning and the infighting started. And some of it was legitimate. Some of it was. There were things which weren't right. Now, Nehemiah didn't avoid the difficult issues that he was confronted with, whether they were outside or inside. And he laid out very clearly the ways in which the community needed to change, to become stronger, and to accomplish the task. And the people we read rose to the challenge. I love Nehemiah's response to the obstacles he faced. He said this. He said, they were just trying to intimidate us, imagining that they could discourage us and stop the work. So I continued the work with even greater determination. Don't you like that? Even greater determination. You know, that's what obstacles and opposition can do with the right perspective, whether that is internal fear or external opposition or in-house negativity. They can make us even more determined as we remember what is at stake here and what the bigger picture is that God is working out through us. Nehemiah said to the people, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. And they did. And that wall was built in record time. Something that had been considered impossible for 75 years was completed in just 52 days. Isn't that amazing? What can happen? Now, the band are going to come back up as I finish, but I don't know where God has specifically sent you in your individual lives, but if you call Kingfisher home, then as a church, we are sent to reach the lost and to see people transformed into fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. That is what we're about. We make no bones about that. And I'm encouraging you this morning, don't let fear get in the way of that. Don't allow the obstacles and oppositions to take you out. Let's look forward to what lies ahead and press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Jesus, is calling us. Who knows what could be built as we choose to press on? Anybody with me? Yes. My life belongs to God. I don't know about you. My life belongs to God. I work for him. And we get to be involved in his plans because of what Jesus has already accomplished for us. We're not working any of this out on our own. In Hebrews 12, verse 3, so our last verse this morning, it says, "Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." Consider what Jesus went through for us. We'll never have to go through even half of that. And he didn't give up. And as we look at him, we can take heart. As we look at him, we'll find strength. Jesus didn't let the obstacles take him out. So even though I've said this 1,000 times or more, this week, let's fix our eyes on him. And let's go live sent this week. Shall we pray? Let's stand together. Father, I want to thank you that Jesus said that we would do even greater things than he did. And I can't get my head around that. But Lord, I thank you that we are not sent out alone, that you are there right with us. And Lord, though obstacles might come, and opposition might come, and discouragement might come, Lord, I pray for each one of us this morning that we would be filled afresh with your Holy Spirit, that we would lift our eyes, that we would see the bigger picture, the bigger perspective. Lord, all that you are doing on the earth right now, all that you are doing in Gloucester right now, all the ways in which you need us to be involved. And Lord, I pray that you give us the courage and the grace, Lord, to not get diverted, but to stand strong in you. In Jesus' name I pray it. Amen.